There is a kind of suffering that no one talks about honestly. The suffering of a person who has everything they were told to want and still feels hollow inside. Not broken by tragedy, not crushed by poverty, simply empty. If that has ever described you, even for a single night, then what you are about to hear is not philosophy. It is a mirror. In the next few minutes, you will not be given a list of habits or a morning routine. You will be given something far more dangerous and far more useful, a way of seeing that, once understood, cannot be unseen. The Stoics did not build a system of self-help. They built a discipline of the soul, and the difference between those two things is everything. We begin where every honest conversation must begin, with the thing you cannot control. You cannot control what happens to you today. You cannot control how others perceive you, whether the world rewards your effort, whether the people you love will stay or leave. Most human misery does not come from the events themselves. It comes from the furious, exhausting belief that we should be able to control what was never ours to control. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled the known world and still wrote in private journals about his own weakness and confusion, understood this. He wrote not for posterity. He wrote to remind himself again and again that the only empire worth governing was the one inside his chest. Here is the first uncomfortable reversal. Freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. Freedom is the radical acceptance of what you cannot change, combined with absolute sovereignty over how you respond. A man in chains who commands his own mind is freer than a king who is enslaved to his own desires. The Stoics did not teach resignation. They taught precision, the precise and disciplined distinction between what lies within our power and what does not. Epictetus was born a slave. Let that land for a moment. One of the most powerful minds in the history of human thought spent his early years as the legal property of another man. And yet he wrote with absolute clarity that no one had ever truly owned him, because no one had ever touched the thing that mattered most: his will, his inner orientation, his capacity to judge and to choose. The body can be chained. The mind, he insisted, cannot, unless you chain it yourself. And most of us do. We chain our minds with fear, with approval seeking, with the desperate and quietly tragic need to be comfortable. Comfort is not peace. This is one of the most important distinctions that modern life has almost completely erased. We live in an age that worships comfort: soft mattresses, frictionless transactions, algorithmic content designed to confirm what we already believe. And we are, statistically, more anxious than any generation in recorded history. The Stoics would not be surprised. They would simply point to the mechanism. When you train yourself to avoid discomfort, you simultaneously train yourself to fear it. And what you fear grows. It always grows. But there is another way. The Stoics called it voluntary hardship, the deliberate, chosen encounter with difficulty, not self-punishment, not performance. A quiet, intentional practice of reminding the body and the mind that they are capable of far more than the comfortable life allows them to discover. Sleep on the floor occasionally, fast for a day. Walk in the rain without resentment, not because suffering is noble, but because discovering that you can endure without collapse is one of the most stabilizing realizations available to a human being. You stop fearing the loss of comfort when you know, not believe, but know that you can live without it. Seneca wrote in a letter to his friend Lucilius, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" There is a dry, almost playful confidence in that question. Is this it? Is this the thing I spent so much energy avoiding? The answer almost always is yes. The thing we dread is almost never as devastating as the dread itself. The anticipation of pain is usually more corrosive than the pain. This brings us to anxiety, arguably the defining affliction of contemporary life. Anxiety is almost never about the present moment. Think carefully about that. When you are truly, fully here, in this exact second, there is only what is. Anxiety is the mind projecting itself forward into an imagined future, and then suffering in advance for events that may never arrive. The Stoic remedy is not positive thinking. It is not the repetition of affirmations. It is something far more demanding and far more effective. The complete, unflinching return to what is actually happening right now. Not what might happen, not what happened before. What is. The present moment is the only place where strength, action, and peace are possible. If something in these words has unsettled you gently, or stirred something you had almost forgotten, consider subscribing to this channel and leaving a comment below. Not a reaction, a thought. Something you noticed in yourself while listening. The conversations that happen in spaces like this one are often more honest than the ones we allow ourselves in daily life. And that honesty is worth protecting. There is a question the Stoics return to constantly, in different forms, across centuries. What do you actually value? Not what you say you value, not what you post, perform, or profess. What do you reach for when no one is watching? What occupies the last hour before you sleep? Because that quiet, unguarded truth is the actual architecture of your life. And most people, if they sat with that question long enough, would find that what they truly value is approval, safety, the avoidance of judgment. A life constructed not around what is meaningful, but around what is defensible. The Stoics call this living according to opinion, and they considered it the deepest form of enslavement. Not because other people are unimportant, relationships, community, contribution. These are central to the Stoic vision of a good life. But there is an immense difference between caring for others and needing others to validate your existence. One is love. The other is a transaction dressed as love. Here is the second reversal, and it may be the most difficult to accept. Most of what you call yourself was never chosen by you. Your fears, your reflexes, your instinctive definitions of success and failure, these were installed in you by culture, by family, by repetition, long before you were capable of consent or critique. The Stoics did not say this to diminish you. They said it as an invitation, because once you see the installation, you can begin the slower, more serious work of choosing, of examining each belief, the way a philosopher examines an argument, calmly, without ego, asking only, is this true? Does this serve my reason and my freedom, or does it merely protect my comfort? Marcus Aurelius, despite commanding legions and presiding over an empire consuming itself at the edges, maintained a practice of extraordinary simplicity. Every morning, he reminded himself that the day ahead would be difficult, not with resignation, but with preparation. He wrote to himself, "You will meet today with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." And then, and this is the part most people skip, he continued, "But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." He did not armor himself against the world by hardening his heart. He armored himself by understanding it. That is the subtle mastery that separates Stoicism from mere toughness. Toughness says, "I will not be hurt." Stoicism says, "I may be hurt, and I will remain whole." There is a porousness to genuine inner strength, an ability to let reality in, feel it honestly, and still not be defined or destroyed by it. Grief is not weakness. Grief is the natural response of a being capable of love. The Stoic does not suppress grief. The Stoic does not perform indifference. The Stoic simply refuses to add unnecessary suffering to the suffering that is unavoidable. You cannot always choose your pain, but you can almost always choose your relationship to it. Consider failure, the word most modern people treat as a verdict. We speak of failure the way earlier centuries spoke of sin, as evidence of fundamental wrongness, as something to be hidden and denied. And so we do not try, or we try only in the small, careful ways that protect us from the full possibility of falling. Epictetus would find this confusion almost incomprehensible. For him, failure was simply information, evidence, a map of where the thinking or the execution required adjustment, not a judgment on the soul. The soul, in Stoic philosophy, cannot fail. It can only be abandoned, and the abandonment is always voluntary. This is the point where philosophy stops being abstract and becomes quietly urgent. Because you have something, everyone listening has something, that you have not yet begun, or have begun and stopped, or have continued in secret with half a heart, because full commitment would mean the full possibility of loss. And the Stoic question is not, what if you fail? The Stoic question is, what kind of person will you have been if you never truly tried? Life, in the Stoic understanding, is not measured in outcomes. It is measured in the quality of the engagement, in whether you brought your full capacity, your full clarity, your full willingness to bear difficulty in service of something real and meaning. Let us end here with the thing everyone is quietly searching for behind every productivity system, every wellness practice, every restless scroll through a screen at midnight. Meaning is not found. This is perhaps the most important correction the Stoics offer to the modern imagination. Meaning is not discovered, like treasure buried beneath the right set of circumstances. Meaning is made. It is made through commitment, through the decision to bring your full attention and your full character to whatever is in front of you, not because it is grand or recognized or rewarded, but because you have decided that this is what you are, a being capable of care, of effort, of presence. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, reportedly said that the well-lived life is simply this, living in agreement with nature, by which he meant not trees and rivers, but the nature of a rational, social, mortal being who has been given the extraordinary, unrepeatable gift of awareness. To live well is to use that awareness honestly, to look at your fear and name it, to look at your avoidance and choose, instead, engagement, to look at the discomfort in the mirror of a genuine life and not look away. You will face difficulty again. Soon, most likely. Something will not go the way you planned. Someone will disappoint you, or the world will prove indifferent to what you need, or the silence inside you will grow louder than the noise around you. And in that moment, you will have a choice that no one else can make and no philosophy can make for you. The Stoics simply ask that you make it consciously, that you remember in that exact moment that you were built for this. Not for ease, not for the seamless, uninterrupted comfort of a life without resistance. You were built for engagement with reality in all its weight and strangeness and beauty. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. But the Stoics would add one quiet correction. The treasure is not waiting in the cave. The treasure is the person you become in the act of entering.